everyone for joining us. I'm Lana, I'm an organizer here in Toronto. I'll be chairing the event tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Indigenous territories, including that of the Mississauga, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron, and probably other nations. Thank you to Bates student for having us all the time. This is a great space, our favorite space. Tonight's talk is sponsored by the Centre for Social Justice, the Greater Toronto Workers' Assembly, and the Socialist Project. And it is the fourth talk in a series on ecological issues titled Capitalism versus Ecology, We Need to Change Everything. And this is, of course, inspired by Naomi Klein's new book. Climate change is already catastrophic for people around the world, especially in the global south, which incidentally had a very small part in causing the crisis in the first place. And Nasima Akter will be telling us about Bangladesh, which is considered one of the most impacted countries and is already seeing devastation as a result of rising sea levels. There are also numerous places being impacted by the way climate change is being addressed at the international level, including the African continent, where climate change mitigation schemes are leading to a carbon colonialism, which Asima Osoka will be addressing for us tonight. And despite the already calamitous situation for communities around the world, we know that UN agreements are weak, non-binding, and they ignore the fact that even their target of 2 degrees would be devastating for countries around the world. And Romain Felly will help us unpack this and talk a little bit about this deadlock that's happening at the international level. And we'll begin with Nasima Akter, who has worked in the field of research and evaluation for the past 18 years, 12 of those leading work at BRAC as the head of the Environmental Research Unit. She's currently Executive Director of Bangladeshi-Canadian Community Services based in Toronto. And I'll hand it over to Nasima.
Thank you, Lana. I would like to thank Social Justice for inviting me here to talk about my country and our situation. Most of you may not know Bangladesh, but only for this climate situation, the one thing our country made famous among these developed countries. And also other thing is the cricket. If somebody knows the sports cricket, that is another field that people know Bangladesh. Otherwise, I'm sure that nobody knows Bangladesh. Next, please. So today I'm going to talk about the climate situation and the victim of climate, the Bangladesh. You can see from this world map, the country, our country, is the small dot in this world map, which is we're surrounded by mostly India. Our north, east and west is surrounded by India, and the southern part is Bay of Bengal. And we can see that Bangladesh is the largest delta, which is come from Ganges, Brahmaputra and Meghna, and this is the third largest delta after Amazon and Congo. So there are some statistics about Bangladesh, the population. Bangladesh is the 8th most populous country in the world, and we have over 160 million people. And if you compare with Ontario, the area of our country is 1/7 of this Ontario province, but the population is around about 12 times of this Ontario population. So you can see that how densely populated is our country. And this population, if you compare with the total world population, this is 2.90% of the world population in Bangladesh. You can see that the population density is very high, especially in Dhaka, the capital city of Bangladesh, where the population is more than 15,000 per square kilometer. But apart from this, we have the longest sea breeze, which is called the Bay of Bengal, which is the largest bay in the world. And we have the Sundarban, the single largest mangrove forest in the world. And then this is actually declared by World Heritage Site by UNESCO. And this is also the home of Royal Bengal tiger. I said how it is vulnerable. If you see this topography of Bangladesh, you can see that the geological position of Bangladesh, the location of Bangladesh actually make this country very vulnerable. We see that there are the upstream Ganges, Brahmaputra and Meghna River, which is coming from India, China and also from Myanmar. All this upstream water is pouring down to Bangladesh, and this is the floodplain area where there is It's like what in some literature you can find, it's like a roti. So it's not even like naan, that there are some up and down. This is like a plain roti. So everywhere this is the flat, plain down. And in the down you can see that this is the Bay of Bengal. So even if its temperature raise, even not raise, we have always flood every year because of this upstream water flow. And when the sea level rise in the coastal area, we have also the saline water inundation from the Bay of Bengal. So what not we have for the disaster? You see the Bangladesh, we have flood, we have drought, we have cyclone, tidal surge, earthquake, arsenic problem in groundwater, salinity intrusion in the coastal area, we have waterlogging, deforestation, especially in the Sundarban, and the river siltation and landslides. All of these natural disasters we have in our country. So what we can see that are we responsible for that? We know that the developed countries emitting the most of the greenhouse gases, which is causing this climate change all over the world. The developed country, they have the boundary for their country, but they don't have boundary for their emission. What they cannot control, they cannot put boundary for their emission. So there the emission is actually heating up the whole world. And we are the poor people, we are the poor countries in the south, we are paying for the cost for that developed activities. Thank you. So these are some of the prediction based on 1990 data that what will be the scenario for Bangladesh for the temperature. Year 2030, the temperature will be in the monsoon season it will be plus 0.7, and the dry season it will be 1.3, and in 250 it will be 1.1 and 1.8 in dry season. Thank you. So there are actually these are the real figure. That is not prediction. This is the real figure from 2084 to 2004. So we plotted this temperature in different parts of Bangladesh. So we can see that gradually the temperature increasing. Can you just move the slides? So these are because you don't know the places. So these are some of the places in Bangladesh. We just to show that these are the things the temperature is rising in Bangladesh, and then resulting the warming of Bangladesh. You can see that drought, dying our river, dying our all kind of this the water pathways. So where you can see that this is causing problem for our irrigation, this is causing problem for our crop production, and even we don't have enough water for drinking. You can see some of the people, they carry the water from after mile, they go just to collect drinking water, one maybe like this pitcher of water. And since rivers are dying, we don't also have problem of communication and transportation. So there are some statistics actually I would like to show from the New York Times, which is published in March 2014. That high tides in Bangladesh were rising 10 times faster than the global average. Seas in Bangladesh could rise as much as 13 feet by 2100, 4 times of global average. In an area where land is often a thin round line between sky and river, nearly a quarter of Bangladesh is less than 7 feet above the sea level. By 2050, rising sea level will inundate some 17% of the land and displace about 18 million people in Bangladesh. It is estimated that as many as 50 million Bangladeshi would flee from the country by 2050 if sea level rose to as expected. Study also found that as many as 1.5 million of the 5 million slum inhabited in Dhaka city, which is the capital of Bangladesh, moved from village near the Bay of Bengal, and they are the victim of these different kind of climate calamities. So what I said, this is the pictorial view of that what will happen if sea level rise because of the temperature rise. So we can see that the situation today means it was actually that, not today, it was from year 2000, when our population was 1.12 million and the total land area was 134 square kilometer. And if 1.5 sea level rise, what will happen to Bangladesh? You can see that the population will be affected, 15% population will be affected, and 16% of the area will be lost. And actually this is the topography of Bangladesh. You can see that most of our country is below 10 meter of sea level. These are some of the statistics from 2018 to 2012. The number of disaster we had 336, and number of people killed is around more than 191,000. And the average kill per year is more than 6,000 people. So I don't want to see the statistics. I think you can imagine that what is the situation. So this is another statistic that we can see that the most people killed, the disaster type was that storm. People killed by storm, around 87%, but the people affected by the flood is 74%. So which is very common for Bangladesh. This is one scenario of the floods, history of floods in Bangladesh. So you can see that from 1954 to 2005, we had 8 major floods between 74 to 2004, and which is considered as one of in 20 years. And we have within 30 years, we had 8 of that kind of floods in Bangladesh. Also, we can see that 60% of worldwide death caused by cyclone in the last 20 years occurred only in Bangladesh. So we know that the climate change is the raising of temperature, and another is precipitation. So if we see that the rainfall increased compared to the base year 1990, we can see that rainfall also increasing during the monsoon, but during dry season the rainfall is decreasing, so which is actually causing drought during the dry season. Can you go down please? Yeah, this is also the real data that is showing that in some part the rainfall is increasing. Yeah, you go down please. And in some part you can see that rainfall is decreasing. So this is the northern part of Bangladesh where the rainfall is decreasing day by day, especially during the dry season. So these are the situation during this flood and even in the drought. You can see this problem, not only the flood is washed away their houses, their shelters, their livestock, their crops. Even they have problem even for, you can see the health and sanitation condition. They lost their work, they lost their crops, they lost their livestock, and then they don't have enough water. All the water sources for drinking water also sink down to the water. So here we see the too much and too little. So this is the calendar of Bangladesh for the climate hazard. You can see flood usually happen. The high flood is during July and August, and the flash flood from March to June, and then drought also in the same time. And we have also soil erosion which happens during June to October, and cyclone. Actually 2 times in a year we have cyclone from March to June, and another one is in August to October. And recently the cold wave added in Bangladesh, because before we are the tropical countries, we never had the cold wave problem. But last few years we have this problem. In our northern part, if the temperature goes down below 8 degrees centigrade, there are lots of people dying in our country. So you cannot imagine that, because the 8 temperature here is very normal, but 8 for Bangladesh is really a disaster, because we don't have that ability to protect our people. We don't have that housing condition. We don't have enough clothes or any resources to protect them from this cold temperature. So when it is 8, it's really cold in Bangladesh. It's outside and inside. It's always the same temperature. It's not unlike here that we have warm temperature at home and the outside is cold. So at least we can survive here. But in Bangladesh, there is no way to survive when you are at home. So this is just to show that what is the intensity of the different disaster. So cyclone hazard, you can see the blue part is the cyclone hazard. Not only the blue and also the grey part. So you see all of our countries under this. And if you see the flood, that is 100% of our country is under this flood threat. And the landslide, especially in the hilly area, we have this landslide problem, and earthquake also in the upper part of northern part of Bangladesh, and drought also in different part in different time and different intensity of drought in Bangladesh. So if we see these maps, we can see that actually the whole country is under different kind of natural disaster threat. So even what we see that Bangladesh is the worst sufferer of this climate change. Even we don't actually emit lots of greenhouse gases. If you see the figure from 2005, we emit only 0.053 to 0.05 billion tons, and comparing to the developed countries who emit actually 82.2 billion tons in 2005. So you can see that what is our contribution in climate change and how much we are suffering. So actually I have talked already in this impact. We see that we have the impact in our land, our freshwater resources, agriculture and natural resources. Too much water during monsoon and flooded area may rise by 6% to 14% respectively for 2030 and 2050 if this situation is exists like this. And then too little water during the dry season causing droughts, increased water demand for irrigation. Every year 3 to 4 million hectares of land suffer from drought, which sometimes may be quite severe. Lean flow in the distributes of Ganges will jeopardize the forest succession process in Sundarban, resulting in the low productivity and poor vegetation cover in the forest. And salinity intrusion due to increase of coastal inundation, damages of ecosystem. It is expected that the area under 1 parts per 1,000 salinity will increase by 17% by 2050, and then which will damage our productive Sundarban. So what is it impacting our livelihood? Bangladesh economy is characterized mostly they rely on the agriculture and rapidly growing industrial sector, and these sectors are directly dependent on the agriculture and natural resources, and this natural resources and agriculture also is impacted by the climate change. And then climate change implies serious vulnerabilities in yield and availability of agriculture and natural resources and consequent effects on industries. Prolonged monsoon floods and drought, leaving 40 million people without livelihood. Climate change condition costing our national economy 1% of the GDP annually over the last decade. Even in this situation, what is happening in our country? Bangladesh economy and flood production continue to grow. Food production continue to grow. And then we also developed flood-resistant variety and salt-resistant variety of rice. And poverty has fallen in just over 20 years. Bangladesh has managed to bring half of its poor above the poverty line. It has succeeded in reducing child mortality, fostering higher life expectancy, and ensuring gender equality. The country is on track to meet all 8 of its Millennium Development Goals by the target year of 2015. And the Bangladesh is also set to achieve 100% school completion, which is in 2011 was 75%. In most of the social indicators, Bangladesh has gone ahead of India. It was told by the Nobel Prize winning economist Amartya Sen. But continued climate change will literally wash away all of our achievements. Nationally, we have community-based adaptation policy. Bangladesh recognized as the leader in community-based adaptation. Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan were developed in 2009. And Bangladesh also developed Bangladesh Climate Change Resilience Fund and Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund. We have Poverty Reduction Strategy Plan. We have National Adaptation Plan of Action 2009 and National Plan for Disaster Management. So looking forward at the national level, the world is now looking at Bangladesh as a pioneer in tackling climate change, and it can indeed become an example for other countries. And this is also said by one of the experts of IPCC. So over the last few years, Bangladesh has been slowly been able to turn around its reputation in the context of climate change from being one of the most vulnerable countries to becoming one of the most adaptive countries. But our question is how long? How long we can cope with this climate change situation? I think everybody knows this, the Naomi's book on this changes everything, capitalism versus the climate. But I would like to quote some of her things here. I mean, everybody knows these things. Climate change has never received the crisis treatment from our leaders, despite the fact that it carries the risk of destroying lives on a vastly greater scale than collapsed bank or collapsed building. So mass movement of regular people can declare one too. This is not only the duty of the leaders. So slavery was not a crisis for British and American elites until abolitionism turned into it one. Racial discrimination was not a crisis until the civil rights movement turned it into one. So we have to speak, and the civil society has to speak to get our right. And there was a student from Canadian college student who said that you have been negotiating all of my life while she was a child, and now she is in the university. So entire her life she is just listening that climate negotiation. So the world's government have been talking about preventing climate change for more than 2 decades. So what is the world situation now? In 2004, 280,000 people died due to tsunami and millions of people become rootless and environmental refugees. Devastating floods and cyclones caused huge loss of life and properties in China, India, USA, and some parts of Europe. Around 240,000 people have been affected with famine in Niger, and presently people in Malawi are facing the drought and periodical food shortage. The devastating effect of cyclone, hurricane, Katrina, and Rita, etc. again remind us that nowhere in this world is free of risk of natural disaster. So even if we see now, even today I was listening the CP24 news, so they were saying that in Prince Edward Island there is snow today. And there is a heat wave in California, and there was a cyclone in some island in Australia. So these are the signs of climate change which is affecting even in the developed countries. So I will finish saying this one. Only when the last tree was withered and the last fish has been caught and the last river has been poisoned, will you realize you cannot eat money. This is the Indian side experience.